died tragically after revealing her darkest secret about JFK. Born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926, in Los Angeles, California, Marilyn Monroe's beginnings were anything but glamorous. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, struggled with mental illness, a battle that rendered her often incapable of caring for her young daughter. This instability meant Norma Jean spent her formative years bouncing between a series of foster homes and an orphanage. This fractured, often lonely childhood laid the foundation for a deep-seated insecurity and an insatiable yearning for love and acceptance that would follow her throughout her life. She never knew the identity of her biological father, a void that contributed to her feelings of being adrift and unwanted. These early experiences, marked by abandonment and uncertainty, instilled in her a vulnerability that, paradoxically, became part of her later appeal on screen, but also made her tragically susceptible to manipulation and heartbreak in her personal life. Norma Jean's path to the silver screen wasn't the typical drama school route. It began during World War II, while she was working at a radioplane factory, spraying airplane parts. A photographer, David Conover, was sent to the factory to take morale-boosting pictures of women contributing to the war effort. He spotted the striking young Norma Jean and recognized her potential. Soon, she left the factory and embarked on a new path, modeling. Her early modeling career was a success. She dyed her hair blonde, developed a striking look, and quickly became a popular pinup model. It was during this time that she caught the eye of talent scouts in Hollywood. In 1946, she signed her first studio contract with 20th Century Fox. It was then that Norma Jean Mortensen was reborn as Marilyn Monroe. The name was chosen carefully. Marilyn, after actress Marilyn Miller, and Monroe was her grandmother's maiden name. It sounded softer, more approachable than her birth name, fitting the image the studio envisioned. Her early years in Hollywood were a grind. She appeared in small, often uncredited roles in films like The Shocking Miss Pilgrim, 1947, and Scudda-Hoo, Scudda-Hey, 1948. The studios initially struggled to figure out how to market her, and her contract with Fox was dropped. Undeterred, she continued to model and took acting classes, determined to hone her craft and prove she was more than just a pretty face. She landed small roles in films for Columbia Pictures before returning to Fox in 1951 with a new, more lucrative contract. Even in these early days, the pressure to conform to a studio-dictated image was immense. She underwent cosmetic procedures, had her hairline adjusted, and was coached on how to walk, talk, and pose. While she sought to improve as an actress, attending classes at the famed Actors Studio in New York, Hollywood primarily saw her as a physical commodity, a dumb blonde stereotype they could market. This early struggle to reconcile her ambition for serious acting with the industry's focus on her looks would become a recurring theme, adding another layer of conflict to her increasingly complex life. She appeared in bit parts that started to gain notice, notably in The Asphalt Jungle and All About Eve, both released in 1950. Though her roles were small, her charisma and screen presence were undeniable. The transformation from the shy Norma Jean to the captivating Marilyn was taking hold, setting the stage for the explosion of fame that was just around the corner. The early 1950s marked Marilyn Monroe's ascent to superstardom. In 1953, 3 films solidified her status as a major star and a bona fide sex symbol. In Niagara, she played a femme fatale, a role that fully utilized her sensual appeal and put her firmly in the spotlight. Following this, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire cemented her blonde bombshell image, showcasing her comedic timing and undeniable screen magnetism alongside co-stars like Jane Russell and Betty Grable. Suddenly, Marilyn Monroe was everywhere. Her image adorned magazine covers, her songs topped the charts, and her persona as the glamorous, slightly naive, incredibly alluring blonde captivated audiences worldwide. She became the embodiment of 1950s femininity and sexuality, a cultural phenomenon unlike any before her. She was, at this point, at the absolute pinnacle of her profession, a bona fide global icon whose every movement, every outfit, every public appearance was dissected, every hairstyle emulated, and every whispered word breathlessly reported by the insatiable press. She commanded the screen, worked with legendary directors, and co-starred with the biggest, most respected names in the business. But even as she reveled in this unprecedented level of fame, public adoration, and commercial success, a part of her yearned deeply for respect as a serious dramatic actress, a validation of her inner depth. This profound desire led her to bravely study at the prestigious Actors Studio in New York, pushing herself beyond the bombshell persona, further highlighting the profound internal conflict that existed so painfully between the shimmering public persona of Marilyn Monroe and the complex, often troubled, yearning person beneath, Norma Jean. Yet, tragically, beneath the seemingly flawless, dazzling surface of her carefully constructed public image, Marilyn Monroe's personal life remained a tumultuous, relentless storm of complicated, often damaging relationships, crushing external pressures, and crippling deep-seated insecurities that she had carried since childhood. Her first marriage, a teenage attempt at finding stability with Jim Doherty, ended swiftly and unceremoniously as the relentless demands of her burgeoning career took undeniable precedence. Then came the intensely scrutinized, highly publicized union with the legendary baseball icon Joe DiMaggio. It was a marriage that captured the imagination of America, seemingly uniting two titans of their respective fields. But it proved to be painfully short-lived, reportedly marred by DiMaggio's intense jealousy, possessiveness, and controlling nature, dissolving after a mere 9 months amidst public drama. Her third marriage was to the celebrated, highly intellectual playwright Arthur Miller, a union that many hoped would finally provide the intellectual stimulation, emotional depth, and stable companionship she so desperately craved. This relationship was perhaps the most complex and publicly analyzed, seen as a fascinating, if improbable, merging of raw beauty and profound intellect, but it too ultimately crumbled under the immense weight of their vastly different worlds, her persistent personal struggles, and the crushing, unrelenting pressure of her unparalleled fame. They divorced in January 1961. Beyond these three significant public marriages, the corridors of Hollywood power, the back rooms of exclusive clubs, and the gossip columns of the world constantly buzzed with tantalizing, persistent rumors of numerous other clandestine affairs, allegedly involving a constellation of incredibly powerful and famous men from various fields, not just entertainment. Each new relationship, whether real or rumored, seemed to be a fleeting, often desperate, attempt to fill the gaping void left by her difficult, lonely past, a search for the unconditional love she never received. Her personal life appeared to be a relentless, exhausting, and often self-destructive cycle of soaring hope, intense, fleeting connection, and often devastatingly crushing disappointment. She openly battled chronic insecurity, struggled terribly, publicly, with substance abuse, relying heavily, perhaps addictively, on a dangerous mix of prescription pills and alcohol to cope with her crippling anxiety, persistent insomnia, and the absolutely relentless pressure of maintaining the perfect Marilyn image, the demands of her schedule, and the constant public gaze, and wrestled deeply with complex mental health issues that, tragically, were so poorly understood and woefully inadequately treated during that era. She was in constant, agonizing need of genuine love, unequivocal affirmation, and stable companionship, often seeking it in places and with people that were ultimately not only detrimental, but downright dangerous to her well-being, her fragile state of mind, and ultimately, her life. However, amidst all of these complicated entanglements, personal battles, and public pressures, there was one specific, alleged connection that proved to be particularly perilous, one alleged relationship that linked her directly, intimately, and dangerously to the absolute pinnacle of American power and influence. This was the alleged clandestine relationship between Marilyn Monroe and the sitting 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, and, according to numerous sources, alleged historical accounts, and widely circulated rumors. This involvement later extended to include his powerful brother, the Attorney General, Robert F. Kennedy. The alleged entanglement between the world's biggest female star and the nation's most powerful family took place during an incredibly sensitive, politically charged era, the intense height of the Cold War. It was a time when the public image of the president, his family, and his administration was not merely carefully curated and managed, but fiercely, aggressively, almost ruthlessly, protected by a formidable political machine driven by power and ambition. Any hint of scandal, particularly a public, undeniable affair between the President of the United States and the world's most famous sex symbol, the blonde bombshell, could have ignited a political firestorm of unimaginable proportions, potentially catastrophic for the young, image-conscious Kennedy administration. Marilyn, perhaps in her profound vulnerability, her desperate yearning for genuine connection, her longing for a rescuer, and perhaps a degree of naive belief in finding true love even in such exalted, powerful circles, reportedly became intimately involved with JFK. While the precise nature, duration, and depth of their alleged relationship remain subjects of intense historical debate, fervent speculation, countless books, documentaries, and whispered rumors, a compelling body of circumstantial evidence, drawing on various alleged accounts, biographies, and alleged insider reports, points strongly to a secret, clandestine affair that occurred during his presidency. The single most public, and now undeniably chilling, moment of their alleged connection occurred on May 19, 1962, at a massive, star-studded gala held at Madison Square Garden to celebrate President Kennedy's 45th birthday. Marilyn, making a breathtaking, unforgettable entrance in a famously sheer, sparkling dress that appeared as if it had been painstakingly sewn directly onto her body just moments before, took the stage before an astonished, captivated crowd. With her signature breathy, almost childlike delivery, she sang a slow, intensely sensual, and undeniably intimate rendition of Happy Birthday, Mr. President. The performance was undeniably laced with subtle innuendo and veiled suggestion, a moment that, in retrospect, feels like a daringly public acknowledgement, perhaps even a provocative challenge, hinting strongly at a deeply private, intimate connection shared with the guest of honor just feet away. It was a performance that reportedly caused significant discomfort and anxiety among the president's advisors and family, and famously led the First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy. But according to the prevailing narratives and numerous alleged accounts that have emerged over the years, the intense relationship with JFK began to cool, or perhaps was deliberately severed, following this very public and potentially damaging display. Perhaps because he felt she was becoming too demanding, too public, too emotionally unstable, or simply too much of a risk to manage discreetly within the confines of a secret affair. It is at this precise juncture that his brother, the powerful Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, is often said to have become involved in Marilyn's life. Some theories, often repeated in biographies and documentaries, suggest Bobby Kennedy was initially dispatched by the president or the Kennedy family machine to gently, discreetly, and definitively sever Marilyn's connection to the president and his family, a damage control operation. Other, more sensational and persistent, accounts claim that Bobby Kennedy developed his own complex relationship with Marilyn, perhaps even a passionate affair himself, further entangling her with the powerful family. Regardless of the exact timeline, the precise nature of their individual connections, or the specific dynamic between the three, Marilyn Monroe was now undeniably, and perhaps dangerously, deeply, intimately, and inextricably entwined with the highest echelons of America's most powerful political dynasty. She was inside the circle, privy to things others could only guess at. The darkest secret so central to the theories surrounding her death isn't merely the existence of these alleged affairs themselves, scandalous as they might seem. Hollywood, even in the early 1960s, was often remarkably adept at burying scandals, silencing rumors, and keeping the private lives of its biggest stars carefully shielded from the harsh glare of the headlines, especially when powerful forces were involved. No, the true peril, the core of the darkest secret, is what Marilyn allegedly came to know, or more critically, what she allegedly threatened to reveal. As her already fragile emotional state spiraled downwards, becoming increasingly erratic and unstable in the tense summer of 1962, fueled by her ongoing, debilitating battles with addiction, a profound sense of being used, manipulated, abandoned, or discarded by the powerful men she had confided in, and her own inherent emotional instability, it is widely speculated, and frequently claimed, that Marilyn Monroe became something far more dangerous than a heartbroken lover. She became a significant, unpredictable liability. Numerous reports, often citing anonymous sources, alleged insider accounts, or historical analyses based on circumstantial evidence, suggest, and some state outright, that Marilyn was meticulously keeping notes, perhaps in a private diary, or even making secret recordings of her highly sensitive, intimate phone conversations, particularly in her final days. In these alleged records, whether written or recorded, she is said to have documented intimate details shared by none other than JFK himself during their private moments together. This information, according to the most persistent and dramatic theories, could have spanned a vast, potentially explosive range of incredibly sensitive topics. Explosive political secrets, perhaps concerning the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, the alleged involvement of the mafia in JFK's election victory or other dealings, or other classified national security matters of the Cold War era. Deeply embarrassing personal scandals and vulnerabilities within the powerful Kennedy family extending well beyond just the affairs. Details about JFK's precarious health issues and the astonishing extent to which they were successfully concealed from the American public. Or even deeply personal, potentially damaging promises or confidences shared between a vulnerable lover and the charismatic president. The absolutely critical point, the central tenet of the dramatic narrative that explicitly links her death directly to the Kennedys, is the pervasive belief that she possessed, or at the very least vehemently claimed to possess, information that was incendiary, highly damaging, and potentially capable of utterly destroying the carefully constructed public image of the Kennedy presidency and forever shattering their political legacy. Furthermore, her increasing volatility, her perceived unpredictability, her emotional breakdowns, and her alleged threats to go public with what she knew, perhaps out of desperation, fueled by anger at being cast aside, or simply a frantic, muddled cry for help in her state of mind, transformed her, in the eyes of those she threatened, from a mere celebrity inconvenience into a significant, active, and intolerable risk that needed to be swiftly and permanently managed, or perhaps permanently neutralized. This alleged knowledge, this darkest secret, is the fulcrum upon which the conspiracy theories turn. The crushing weight of allegedly holding this darkest secret, and the immense, unseen pressure reportedly applied to her by powerful forces to maintain absolute silence, took a terrible, perhaps fatal, toll on her already fragile psyche and physical health. The constant anxiety, the profound feeling of being trapped, used, manipulated, or ultimately abandoned by some of the most powerful men in the country, all exacerbated her existing psychological and emotional struggles to a breaking point. She was reportedly becoming increasingly isolated, her reliance on a dangerous mix of prescribed and illicit medication escalating dramatically and dangerously, and viewed by some within the formidable Kennedy circle and their associates as a problem that had escalated far beyond mere damage control or management, a problem that, in their perceived view, tragically, needed to be permanently resolved. The chilling transformation from a desired confidant and lover to a perceived, existential threat is absolutely central to this dark, tragic narrative. And so, the story reaches its devastating, mysterious, and eternally debated climax the night of August 4th, 1962. Marilyn Monroe was found unresponsive in her modest Los Angeles home early on the morning of August 5th. The official ruling from the Los Angeles County coroner was acute barbiturate poisoning, listed as a likely self-inflicted. But almost immediately, the official story felt inadequate, riddled with disturbing inconsistencies, raising red flags and generating questions that have festered, multiplied, and fueled fervent speculation, intricate conspiracy theories, and countless investigations for over 60 years. The scene itself was viewed as suspicious by many investigators, reporters, and later, historians. It was reportedly cleaned and tidied before the police were even called. The presence of key individuals like her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, and her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, at the house before the authorities arrived raised serious questions about what transpired in those critical early hours and who was controlling the narrative. There was the perplexing absence of a glass of water or any residue of pills in the stomach lining, usually required to swallow the large number of pills reportedly found in her system, according to the toxicology report, potentially suggesting a different method of ingestion or even administration by another party. There were persistent, credible rumors of missing diaries, missing phone records, or other documents that Marilyn was known to meticulously keep. Documentation that might have contained the very darkest secret in question. The speed and certainty with which the likely self-inflicted ruling was made, seemingly before a truly thorough, unbiased investigation could be completed, struck many as unusually hasty and predetermined. Discrepancies emerged, contradictions appeared, and testimonies of key witnesses shifted subtly, or dramatically, over time as pressure mounted. Even questions about the autopsy itself arose, adding fuel to the fire of suspicion. Was it truly the tragic, lonely end for a woman finally? Completely overwhelmed by her inner demons, consumed by the relentless pressures of her extraordinary life, her failed relationships, and her battles with addiction? Or was it something far, far more sinister? Something orchestrated by powerful forces? Was her death the direct, deliberate consequence of her alleged relationships with John F. Kennedy and perhaps Robert Kennedy, and the darkest secret she supposedly held within her, the truth she allegedly revealed or threatened to reveal? Was she, the world's most famous, most fragile star, coldly, brutally, and efficiently silenced to protect the image, the reputation, the power, and the political future of one of America's most prominent, ambitious, and influential families? The conspiracy theories are numerous, complex, and often point fingers not only directly at the Kennedys themselves, but also at figures closely associated with them, including elements within the CIA, or even figures within the American Mafia. The chilling hypothesis at the core of these theories is this: powerful individuals, fearing what Marilyn definitively knew, or what she was about to do, orchestrated her death, whether through forced overdose or other means, to prevent her from revealing information that could have irrevocably damaged or even brought down the administration, shattered the carefully constructed Kennedy mythos, and potentially changed the course of American history. The timing of her death, coming so soon after the peak of her alleged tumultuous involvement with both JFK and RFK, and amidst widely reported accounts of her increasing instability, her desperation, her feelings of betrayal, and her alleged threats to speak out publicly seems, to proponents of this theory, far too tragically convenient, far too precisely timed, to be mere coincidence. In this terrifying, speculative narrative, her death wasn't just a passive, personal end resulting from her own struggles. It was, chillingly, an active, final, decisive act of control executed by those who were utterly, desperately terrified of what she knew and what she might say to the world. Marilyn Monroe's life was a dazzling, incredibly complex, and ultimately profoundly heartbreaking tapestry woven from the conflicting threads of raw, undeniable talent, immense global fame, deep personal trauma, and relentless external pressures from an unforgiving industry and society. From her beginnings as a lonely, forgotten orphan shunted from home to home, she soared to become a global icon, a symbol of beauty, fame, vulnerability, and, in many ways, the idealized yet unattainable American dream itself. Yet, her story serves as a stark, painful, and cautionary illustration of the often brutal pressures inherent in the controlling Hollywood studio system of the time, the dehumanizing objectification of women in the public eye, and the devastating toll that unaddressed personal struggles and trauma can take when amplified exponentially by the blinding, unforgiving glare of the global spotlight. Her relationships, particularly the alleged clandestine affairs with the president and his powerful brother, and their potential explosive political ramification, added a layer of profound danger, paranoia, and potential fatality to her already fragile, tumultuous existence. Today, over 6 decades later, Marilyn Monroe remains an enduring, magnetic, and endlessly fascinating legend. Her image instantly recognizable in every corner of the globe. But the stubborn, persistent mystery surrounding her death, the unsettling whispers of a darkest secret concerning none other than President John F. Kennedy, and the chilling, unproven possibility that she was deliberately, calculatingly silenced because of it, continues to utterly fascinate, provoke intense debate, generate countless investigations, and haunt the collective imagination. Her story is a poignant, unsettling, and perhaps terrifying reminder that behind the shimmering facade of old Hollywood glamour, behind the carefully constructed public images of icons, and indeed, behind the highest, most powerful echelons of authority and influence, lay hidden truths, profound personal tragedies, and secrets that some were allegedly willing to go to unimaginable, fatal lengths to keep forever buried from the world. The definitive, unassailable truth of that final night in August 1962 may, frustratingly, never be fully, publicly known, leaving Marilyn Monroe forever tragically, inextricably linked in the annals of history and conspiracy theory to the darkest secret she allegedly carried to her grave, an icon whose life and death remain one of the 20th century's most enduring, heartbreaking, and deeply suspicious mysteries.